So I commissioned in the Hawaii Air National Guard in February of 2001 as a second lieutenant. And a week later, I reported to Columbus Air Force Base, Mississippi for what would be a year of Air Force pilot training. So on September 11, 2001, I had already track selected from the T-37 to the T-38. I was in the 50th Flying Training Squadron. We're in Mississippi, so I was on Central Time. Showed up just like any other day. Went through the Air Force gates at Columbus, parked my car, walked into the squadron, and I saw a group of my Air Force pilot classmates had surrounded the operations desk televisions and were watching live footage from New York City and from the World Trade Center, where the first tower had already been hit and was already on fire. And this was now being picked up by networks across the country and across the world. And there was still speculation as to that point of what had hit the tower and what was happening. I picked up the phone, and this was before cell phones. I think we were all carrying pagers back then in 2001. But I got a hold of a phone and I called back to Hawaii. And you can imagine this is Central Time, 8, 9 o'clock a.m. Central Time. So Hawaii, is 6 hours behind East Coast time, 5 hours behind Central Time. But I called back home to Hawaii. I called my dad. My dad was up. He was watching on TV. And the reason I called him was because my mom at the time was a United Airlines flight attendant. And I knew that that she was on a trip. I didn't know where she was, but I knew that one of the airlines that went down in Pennsylvania could have been a United Airlines airplane. And so I had called my dad to find out where my mom was and to find out if he had heard from her and if she was safe and she was okay. Thank goodness, she wasn't on that airplane, but she was on a layover in Los Angeles. But, my first thoughts went to where my mom was. Not sure if she was flying on one of those United Airlines planes that day. So checked on the family, made sure the family was okay. And, obviously the mood back home in Hawaii was the same mood that most of us felt throughout the country, where we were in shock, this profound grief and sadness over the thousands of people who lost their lives at the Pentagon, in Pennsylvania, at the World Trade Center. And then that led, to what are we going to do next? And what are we going to do to respond to this? And, I think the country was united together for the most part, that there had to be a response. And, I wouldn't see combat for a few more years. I graduated from Air Force pilot training in 2002, had a few more years of training to do to become mission qualified and mission ready. But I would make my first deployment to Afghanistan in August of 2005 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, when I deployed with the 517 Eller Squadron out of Alaska. I had prepared and trained for years for that moment. I volunteered to go to Alaska to fly with an active, I was a National Guard, Air National Guard pilot, and I volunteered to deploy with an active duty flying squadron out of Alaska. I packed my bags. I flew up to Elmendorf, Air Force Base, Alaska. I showed up at the squadron and I jumped on the C-130 and they took me with them to Manas Air Base in Kyrgyzstan. I had prepared for that moment. I had witnessed 9/11 in training and I was ready to make my contributions. And I wasn't about to sit on the sidelines.